Right, so we're going to kick this off. I'm Jeremy, and we're going to go back in time to some of you may remember these days. All right, so back in the early to mid '90s, I worked in an internet provider that was in Kansas City, and I started out doing a lot of tech support. Ended up doing some system admin, network admin, kind of a little bit of everything at that time. And I was one of those that was creating those CDs that had everything from you had your WinSock, you had Netscape Navigator, you had Telnet, you had WSFTP, and that was kind of one of my roles. But also at that time, I was also starting to do a lot of networking. Was running cable as we were growing our team, and we took over 3 floors of a building, and so we had to run all the cabling. And the decision was made when we were doing this cable runs that the contractors should be the ones that should mark the cable where they ended, and then we would just do the runs. Ended up being kind of a really dubious decision because it ended up being not me. It was not the person doing the job. It was ended up kind of being us that had to go back and do it. The contractors never really did the job. So manager came to me at that moment soon after and said, we don't know where these actually go. And so it'd be a really good idea, again, he used the word we should go ahead and use a tone generator and go through all 80 of these and figure out where they terminate, and then write them down on the switch panel that just happens to be behind your desk. And so I sat, and my 20-year-old self calculated how long that was going to take. It was going to be like 8 to 10 hours, and I was not amused at all. So I sat back and I started trying, just really kind of fuming at his lack of vision, and then I happened to notice that all of those patch panels were right behind me. So I had this eureka moment, and I unplugged one of those network cables. Phone rang. This is pretty close to what happened. Hey, I can't access GeoCities. Email says I can't connect to the Popcorn server, which, if you remember, that was POP3. And so I was like, it's really interesting. Let me take a look. Unplugged it back in. Hey, it works. And I said, amazing. We are experiencing intermittent network outages in the building. Can you tell me what the says on your cord at your desk? Proceeded to write that down, and over the next roughly 2 hours, we had intermittent network outages in the building. And so the idea here was that, I understood that, the idea was that we got everybody involved. And it was really kind of starting to push forward all of this new idea of, DevOps. And so we're going to go through some of those principles. Teamwork, of course. Encouraging teamwork. I got everybody in the building involved, whether they understood that they were involved in a experiment or not. They were involved. Teamwork was there. It made the company work. We also reduced silos. No longer was it people working and throwing it up over the wall. We were all in it together, whether they knew it or not. We were eating success for breakfast with skim milk. Reduced all those silos. I also live in Kansas. I didn't create any silos to that time. Winning. So also, the system thinking is that, again, coming back to just everybody working together and trying making this an automated type of process. And so it was all very systematic. I unplugged 2 to 3 at a time, maybe 5, get more people involved. And then also learning from failure of the idiotic VP of IT that decided the contractors knew better than those of us that were actually running the cabling. It was not the last time that he made us learn from his failure. And then we communicated. Back then, phones were actually used for conversation. We weren't doing TikTok dances. We were not doing little Snapchats and all those fun things. I actually used the phone. I communicated quite well, I would say, with everybody that called in. And I understood also that I was accepting some great feedback from them, that I was the champion, and that, of course, by implication, the VP of IT was not. And so I accepted all that feedback from them that I was doing such a great job, and I iterated rapidly. I didn't do, I made the necessary changes that needed to be done. Sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 10, depending on how fast I could answer the phone calls. And so, just like as you're building a deck, which you don't want me to do, I iterated. I just made sure that I was adapting to the times, and then I automated it. Again, it came back to just making sure that it was everybody was getting involved. And that's really the core of DevOps is just automating wherever you can, where it's appropriate. In this case, it was appropriate for everybody to automate and do it for me. And while this is very tongue-in-cheek, there was a day when we didn't have a lot of these core principles, and so I highly recommend that you check out DevOps for Dummies by Emily Freeman. It will get you to further understand these core principles. Thank you.